Hello everybody, welcome. Michal here, and today I have my special guest on the True Transformation podcast. He's ex-military, and after finishing his service, he decided to be entrepreneur. Let's hear the story directly from him. Dominic, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Michal. It's a privilege to meet up again after so many years when we originally crossed paths. So yeah, delighted
Definitely.
to be with you.
Yes, well, I need to say that I know Dominic for, well, I would say about like 15 plus years.
Yeah,
And,
very much. Before the grey hair came in.
Before, yes, well, before the gray hair, exactly. And yeah, it was a great time back then as it is now. And well, I know a lot about you, but the listeners, they don't. Dominic, will tell us about this part of your life where you, well, completed your service and when you went back to life after that.
Yeah, I suppose I go a little bit upstream and look at the circumstances to why I decided to leave my Air Force career behind, because it was a little bit earlier than I'd originally planned. And I think, when you're in the military, when you first go in and you're fully committed and you're excited and you're a young man, it's very much a whole being commitment. You invest so much of yourself into that career, and not just about the work side of it, but your whole social life, your family, everything's intertwined. So for me, when I joined the military, it was that whole being investment. I didn't think of anything beyond it. I put all my eggs in one basket, really. But I was a young man. I went in to the Air Force at 18. By the time I got to 30, I kind of thought a little bit differently. I'd had a lot of experience along that way. And I just came to a point where I just felt I'd grown out of the things that, previously had probably been really exciting and had kept me in. So the decision to leave in the end was actually quite a rush. I didn't plan it well, and I talk to lots of people now about planning their transition and what they decide to do after leaving. But I didn't, if I'm brutally honest. I kind of did that thing where you're getting frustrated with your superiors, or you're in a work environment where you're feeling a bit stifled and you don't feel your full potential is being tapped into or brought out. So I just, I suppose not a rage, but very much a rash moment, went, right, I'm leaving. And I didn't know where I was going to leave to. I just decided now's the time. I'd done 15 years at that point. If I was going to stay to the full pensionable amount, would have been 22 years. And I just couldn't see myself doing another 7 years in the frame of mind and the circumstances that I was in at the time. So yeah, I had to give 18 months notice. So it was still a big decision and still quite a long wait. But yeah, it was traumatic in a way, but it was kind of just a pull that I felt I had to go. I didn't feel like there was a future for me staying in.
Well, yes, well, 18 months, that's a long time. It's if we think about this now, well, come on, a lot of people in so-called normal jobs, they have like 2 weeks, sometimes less, sometimes a month, maybe eventually 3 if they long time with a company, and that's it really. And for you, 18 months, I wouldn't call it a rash decision, because you could decide to stay at any point. Is that right?
Well, I think, I could have probably withdrawn that notice to leave, but I think the difficult thing that you only know when you know, right, when you find out, is once you make that decision to go, when you're in an environment which is so all encompassing, where everybody has made that investment, the person who decides to leave, I can almost say you're treated like a bit of a traitor, because everyone else is making this, whole being investment. They're fully committed, they're in. And if you say you're going to leave, or you want to do something outside, you actually get ostracized a little bit. and I'm not the only person I've had this conversation with, but so I did feel as that 18 months ticked on, I was getting pushed outside of the circle, that I wasn't as involved in things, socially. I say, it's not just the works thing, it's the social side as well. So I felt isolated, if I'm honest. I think in my last 12 months in particular, it was quite difficult. It was difficult around the peers, around the people I was working with, and I genuinely felt isolated during that time. So it wasn't the best of my career. And I look back on it now and I think, well, I did have good fun. I had a good career up to the point, where it changed for me. And I don't want the last 18 months to kind of dull the memory of that, really. But yeah, the reality was that the last 18 months was a difficult time.
Also, how did you deal with all that stress? Because, well, technically it's everything the way you knew it was, I would say, falling apart, because like you said, you've been pushed away, so you've lost connection where you still could have it and well, make those friendships stronger, but you haven't been accepted anymore. And on the other hand, you didn't have a place to look towards just yet because you didn't know exactly what to do. Well, how did it affected you?
Well, I think, thrown into the mix there, I had a young family. I had two stepchildren who were, around 9 or 10. I had two children of my own who were very young, sort of 2 and 3 years old. So I felt a lot of pressure. My wife at the time, who we're not together anymore, but I think, it put a massive amount of strain on the family relationship. I'd have to shoulder some responsibility for that, because we're back in the 80s and 90s, really, where, men didn't talk about things quite as well as we do now.
Yeah.
And I genuinely didn't have those conversations about what are we going to do as a family, because it wasn't just me that was leaving the military. The whole family was leaving. We were housed on a military accommodation. Their friends, the people in the immediate vicinity, everything was tied in with the military. So, I was making the decision to leave, but I hadn't had the conversation with my wife. And I hadn't sat down with her and said, right, okay, what are we going to do? Where are we going to settle? Where are we going to work, etc. And I look back on it now with my head in my hands, really, because I made all the mistakes that, I'd be advising people now not to make. But it was a tough time. You throw in the family side to it, and I felt a massive amount of pressure. And self-imposed some of it, but actually genuine pressure as, okay, you need to put a roof over your head. You need to find work that at least provides a kind of lifestyle close to what you've got right now. And yeah, it was just pressure, it was daily pressure. And of course, when you've got 18 months to leave, you can't go applying for jobs 18 months out and get a job offer, because you say, well, yeah, thanks, but you'll have to wait a year. So you're kind of in limbo. You're getting distanced in the environment you're in, but you're not yet in a new environment. So mentally, you are drifting. You probably idle mind at sometimes. There's almost a degree of self-destruct going on at the same time, because you're not committed anymore to the work you were, as fully committed as you were, but you haven't got anything else to commit to either. So all of a sudden, that purpose and that passion that you had is now dulled, and there isn't anything to fill the void. So it is a really tough time. And, I think for anybody who's changing career in particular, and this, the military transition's a massive one. But if you haven't found a new purpose, it's a really tough time for people. And I think, the mental health side of things, which we'd recognize now, but at the time, that's probably not been recognized with myself. The support that's available wasn't the same. And I think until you go through it, you don't realize just how impactful that can be. So, yeah, lots of lessons learned in that, looking back on that 18 months in particular.
Yes, well, if I'm listening to it now, it's technically what you are telling me. I hear similar things from people who have depression and who are literally suicidal, and they are telling me, well, I want to take my life, there is no point for me to be here at all. They say exactly the same. What for you is a history now. And yes, back then there was no chance to go and talk about this to someone, because, well, first of all, no one wanted to listen, and even if they did, they wouldn't know what to say and what to do.
Yeah, I think that, you know, from my point of view, you know, over the last 20 odd years now, you grow and you gain a bit of self-awareness, and you can recognize yourself and almost as in the third person. But I think, you know, society and the military in particular has had to develop the understanding, the support, and everything around supporting the person. You know, and there's still some way to go. And I know what's out there for people who are leaving the military now. And actually, for me, the biggest problem for a lot of people leaving is themselves. It's not the lack of support. It's not the lack of opportunities. It's actually themselves and having that self-awareness and understanding who they are, what their purpose is, what their passions are, and trying to follow that. But yeah, I think I come from an age, you know, I'm a little bit few laps around the block, but I think I come from a generation where we did tough it out. You know, we didn't have the opportunities maybe to decompress or to, you know, reduce our mental stress. So I think we found a way, you know, and whether that's you build resilience because you've had some tough times. If you never have tough times, for me, how do you build resilience? Because you're never pressured, you're never put in an environment or situation that you have to kind of, sometimes you just have to guts it out. So I think for me, you know, sport and exercise was a massive outlet. And while things were kind of falling apart or not quite working for me in one avenue, everything in sport and exercise was just balancing me out and allowing me to function and allowing me to kind of keep moving forward. So yeah, that, I mean, I look back on it now and go, God, if I hadn't played sport, if I hadn't played my rugby, if I hadn't, you know, trained, you could just get swallowed up by it, I think.
Yes, probably that's what would have happened, but likely it didn't. Even more because, well, you knew where you are and you went to the military for a reason. So at least you had a mindset of looking for purpose. You see, when I speak to young people, students, for example, they on university and they still don't know what they want with their lives. I speak to people in, well, 30s, early 30s, and they still don't know what they want with their lives, and they never had career that they committed to. They just skipping from place to place and thinking, well, I need to find something that will fit me, but well, I'm not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a parent. I've got grown-up children now, and you know, I kind of deal with young people, but I sometimes feel that people are waiting for something to come to them, and they're, you know, people want things a lot easier now than I feel, you know, 20, 30 years ago, where you had to go out, you maybe had to do the mundane job on the way to finding something else. You know, you had to pay the bills before you could get to what you really wanted to do. And I do think there is that thing about, if you don't know what you want to do, go and work out what you don't want to do. Go and do something. Because even if it's not what you want to do long term, you'll just tick it off and go, well, I've tried it, I don't like it, I know what I really want to do. And I actually think that trying things, that actually just going out, working, getting into a routine, getting up in the morning, going, you know, turning up on time, you know, turning up in the right kit, the right clothing, the right attitude, it shapes you, so that when you do finally get to the thing that you really want to do, you're a good person to have in that organization or in that business, because you've got all the personal skills sorted out. You know, you can show up, you can be up, you can be yourself. Whereas some people who I think are just sitting there waiting and not going out and maybe, you know, starting a career doing something, they just haven't got those skills. And they are skills, and I think they do need to be sharpened and they need to be honed. So, you know, be a good person first, be an all-round person, and then I think that when you find your passion, you know, you'll fly. But without those skills, I think you've got a passion, but you can't fulfill it.
Yes, well, it's basically the way you do small things, you do everything. So keep on trying and give your best, and you will get there.
Yeah. Like, and I always say, you know, you don't automatically get your dream job or your absolute job first time round. You know, there are stepping stones, there are proving grounds. You know, you got to kiss a few frogs first, as the old saying goes, you know, to get to where you want, you know. And I remember my first job. I remember the first job I did when I left the military. It ultimately wasn't what I wanted to do long term, but I needed to do something. I employed some of the skills and the expertise that I'd gained. But it was right. Okay, we do this first. Now we prove ourselves. Now we learn about life outside the wire. Now you become, you know, I won't use the term civilian because we're never a civilian. We're only ever a veteran, right? So, but you have to learn. You have to learn not to be in uniform anymore, and who you are without that uniform on, without all that structure taken away. You have to understand how you react. That self-awareness I talked about earlier on. So, you know, when I first left, I would say probably the first 2 years was a learn. You know, I was learning every day. It was what to like to work alongside people who aren't in the military. They don't think like we did in the military. You know, you can't get frustrated with that sometimes. You've got to adapt. You've got to, you know, you've got to be a bit of a chameleon, and you've got to fit into that new environment without, you know, causing uproar.
Yes, well, so saying that, because we are talking here about transition, about how you transformed. So we know we have the period of last 18 months in the military, and we know it was tough. You know, you moved straight to the new territory, completely new, and well, you were trying things and testing things. And well, then there is this important moment where the transformation happens, when it clicks and you know, well, I'm going that way. What about that? When did it happen for you, and how it was?
Well, I could look back on it now and say, well, I was lucky. I caught a break. You make your own luck. I came out. I got involved in management within a fitness health club, which I'd come as a physical training instructor out of the military, so it was kind of familiar territory. And I just thought I was doing what everybody did. You know, I suppose you normalize, and I think that's another thing for people leaving. The behaviors and what you expect when you're in the military, you just normalize that, and actually that behavior and what you've done is exceptional, but you don't recognize that when you're surrounded by other exceptional people. And I think when I came out, I worked hard. I kind of applied my usual mindset and my usual thinking way about going about business, and I got recognized, with some national awards, which I think at that point I kind of thought to myself, actually, maybe I am in the top 10%. You know, you never say you're the best at everything, but because there's always someone around the corner who can trump you. But I think it gave me a massive confidence boost to say, right, I'm outside the wire. I've landed here. I've excelled. People have recognized that within the industry that I was working. And I think that gave me a massive confidence. And because I think, you know, for everybody going into a new environment and trying to change and adapt, there is sometimes that imposter syndrome where you think, you know, you're only one day away from somebody finding you out or exposing you for being above your station, sort of thing. So I think that when that happened, it was a real boost. And that, I think, was the time when I went, right, I've done this job. I've worked for someone else. I've helped them grow their business. I've helped their business be successful. And in the same time, I've been recognized. Okay, what's next? So I got headhunted. I had an opportunity to go to a higher level and to open up a club and do things with them. But again, it was a cycle, because I did the same thing. I went there, made them successful, and then I was like, right, what's next? And at that point, I kind of thought I was getting that little bit of frustration that I had in the military, where the people I was working for either weren't going to move quick enough or didn't want to go as far as I did with something. And I felt like I'm not going to get to my potential because I'm having to wait for somebody else to take a step forward before I can follow. So at that point, I went, I need to work for myself. And I think I've been out of the Air Force 3 years. So, I was into the second job, but 3 years out, and I went, I'm going on my own. And again, just like I did when I decided to leave, I didn't have the conversation with my then wife. I didn't explain the implications, the possibilities. I tackled that transition. I'd provided the house, I'd got the income, I'd done all the things that were fearful at the time. And now I was kind of going to go do it all over again. I was about to make a decision that was going to have a massive impact on the family. And again, I didn't talk to anyone about it. I just went, that's what I'm going to do. And I just went for it. So, yeah, I think when you get that external validation of your ability or your skills, when you're new into a sector or into a job, that can be a massive boost, and otherwise I think you're always questioning, you're always wondering, am I actually any good? How would I fare, if I went for another job? So yeah, I think that was the situation for me.
But you did say something very important in here, and it's something that few people already told me. It's not a thing that is happening, it's the process with natural steps that come one after another, and that's the progress, not just the change, but the progress. You're on the right track and you're making improvements instead of making the changes and starting from the scratch something else. And that's very important clue in here for everyone who listens. Don't just try the new thing, new company, new business, new industry, just because this one doesn't work just yet. Make a progression, modify it.
Yeah, I think for me, when I made the first move out of the military, yeah, it was a lot of daunting things. I talked before about the home, the family, but then actually finding a job that at the right level, etc. But I think once you've gone through that, when you have to go through it again, it's okay. You've done it. You can go through that. You've done it once. You can do it again. And I have my own process to how I tackle these things. So I think every time you reinvent yourself, or you go for a new role, or you go for a higher role, then the more times you do it, actually, the easier it becomes. You don't fear. And I think that, the entrepreneurship side of it, yeah, when we all start, there's no getting away from it. Everyone's winging it to a certain degree, right? Nobody has all the answers. You learn something new every day. You're wearing multiple hats. The thing you're really good at, that's great, but there's loads of things that you're not. And over time, you pick up all these skills. But, it's fair to say that after time, your fear of risk, your thought process, your emotional responses all start to become normalized. And I think for me, that whole process started going into the military. The next one was coming out of the military. Although in between, every time we get posted and moved around, you have to go into a new environment, new set of people, you up sticks, you move locations. So I suppose in a way, there's this repeat cycle that, change is not a problem. Moving, adapting, it's just part of your DNA. And that's why I think actually people coming out of the military are really well predisposed to becoming entrepreneurs. And it's not something that they would maybe think of as a first option when they come out. But all the traits, all the behaviors, all the skills of an entrepreneur, you do develop while you're in the military. I got no doubt about it.
Well, definitely. And it the best, not just because, you've been there for like 15 years. it's something else, because well, I ask you to tell a bit more about this in a minute, because I know you now working with people who are actually deciding to retire and will go into so-called normal life. I have similar experiences while talking to professional athletes, and they say similar things. They just say, well, it's the process, and then you have all the skills, you have a mindset, and well, you get a job, and you treat each another client or another business like another competition that you need to prepare to. You need to gather as many informations as possible, and you need to, well, build a strategy that will get you to where you want to be.
Yeah, and I think much the same as elite sport. You know, I think the parallels of a career ending, and you know, sometimes careers end, you know, at short notice because of injury. You know, people retire before they reach their full potential, or they get cut early. And you know, I think medical discharge from the military is like a career-threatening injury in sport. Yes. And actually, I think the people who go to full term, you know, in the military, they do 30 years. They institutionalize isn't the right word, but they become reliant on the things that are around them, and they don't necessarily know who they are without those things. I think the people who are forced to leave early, and in some cases that's because of discipline, or that's because of injury, or they, like me, they just get frustrated. I think it forces you to be more adaptable, you know, because you know there's going to be another career. You know, I was still a fairly young man. I was early 30s when I left, so I wasn't at retirement point. You know, if I'd have done 30,
well, there is a lot of life, professional life ahead of you when you're in your 30s. So definitely, well, you can have a whole career by the time you're supposed to retire. So that's definitely, that's for sure. And yeah, well, you've learned it the hard way, and now I wanted to ask you as well about the easy way, because, well, based on your experiences, you started, well, not that long ago, you started a new business, and you help people who actually are leaving their service to, well, go through all this that you needed to go through, but quicker and easier. Tell us about, well, just the recognition of the problem and how you help those people to get to the, well, I use this term again, so-called normal life, how you work with them.
Yeah, so I'm now working with it. Well, I suppose the term is veteran support. It's for service leavers and veterans who are either preparing to leave the service, you know, much like myself, 18 months, 2 years before their end date, or people who are already out but are underemployed, that haven't found that new purpose, you know, haven't found the what next after their military career. So, you know, I work with a company called Job Oppo. I found them randomly. I started a podcast at the start of COVID, which was focusing on stories of people who've made the transition successfully and are into a successful second career. And we chat to, you know, we've over 100 episodes, lots of different lived experiences. And one of the people that I spoke to, Gareth Williams, was a former Army, UK Army and Australian Army veteran. And we got chatting after the podcast, and we kept in touch. He asked me to do a little bit of podcasting for their company, highlighting work in different sectors for veterans and service leavers. And ultimately that turned into a collaboration where he kind of said, look, we think there's a role here for you. And to be honest, I leapt at the chance because I felt I had the lived experience of going through that transition without support, as well as what I'd learned, you know, in my time after leaving the service and through setting up my own businesses and so forth. So for me, it was an ideal opportunity to give back, to help the next people. We use the term, you know, send the elevator back down for the next guy. So if I can provide a bit of advice, we provide employment, we provide employability, anything related to that preparation, that bit of discovery about yourself, or actually introduction into a company. So there's lots of things that we do. But ultimately, it's a community, and the veteran community is unique. There isn't another one like it. The willingness to help each other and to give back and help the next guy is unparalleled. I think I can't imagine a group of people who work together at, I'm going to pick randomly, I don't know, worked at KPMG. In 20 years' time, they would help somebody else who works at KPMG. They would have long forgotten that contacts list. They'd have moved on, and they might hit their old school buddies. Whereas the veteran community is, well, it's still committed. It's still serving each other. So, I host an app-based community. We have links with employment partners who specifically want to target and employ service leavers and veterans. So for me, it was great. It was a great opportunity. It allowed me to follow my purpose now, and that's ultimately what we talk about is, how do you change? What's the new thing that fills the void? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What gets you excited? And I feel quite privileged to be able to do that now.
Perfect. That's fantastic, and that's why I'm going to ask you to send me all the links that people can use if anyone listens and wants to get in touch with you or with Job Oppo, how to contact them, because those links, they going to be in the video version in the description, and on the podcast website I'm going to include all of them. So people can just get in touch with you directly or with the company, whichever they prefer, and reach out for help.
Yeah, I think the important part of that for my view as well is it isn't just about people who are looking for work. Obviously, someone wants to change jobs. Yes, we can help them with that. But it's about the people who have found work, who are happy in the role that they're in and are now ready to give back. And actually, we've got people joining the community all the time who they don't need a job, but they want to do an introduction. They want to help somebody find a way into either a particular business, or they want to connect them with someone else. So, if anyone's listening and they've served, as long as you've served, you're eligible to join the community. And if you want to give back and you want to network and you want to communicate with other veterans, like-minded people for other people's benefit, look us up. Michal, I'll have the links up there, but that'd be great.
Fantastic. That's what we're going to do. And yes, I think with that positive aspect of what you went through, we're going to end this interview, because I'm going to in a minute talk to you about having another interview with you, and we'll ask more about professional success in business, but that will be for the next episode here. But for now, Dominic, thank you very much for sharing your story, sharing the story of a lot of struggle and fight along the way. For pointing out what's important for people, what they should remember about.
No, it's a privilege to come on. Appreciate the opportunity, and as I always say, if my lived experience helps somebody else, when they're faced with the same kind of challenge, if there's a couple of messages in there, then that's a good thing.
Yes, that's the moment when we want to make this world a better place, even if we know that we're not going to stay that long here.
Oh, I'm hoping for a little bit longer.
Like I said once, first 100, I'm going to live it all, and the second is not decided yet.
Excellent.
We'll see how it's going to be. Anyway, Dominic, thank you very much for being here with me on the show. Thank you for listening to this conversation, and guys, the links are somewhere below, above, around, so look for it and share it with veterans. If you know anyone, they might need it, might want it, might don't even know that they need it. And just from the top of my head, I know already one person that is going to get the link with this interview right after I post it. So yes, please share it. fantastic then. Thank you very much
Okay.
and see you next time.
Thanks, Michal.